Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Life by Design podcast. On this week's episode, I talk with Shani Timms. Shani is a soul-led business coach, creative director, and 3 times business founder, helping entrepreneurs build an authentic and aligned brand. And she is also my fiance. Damn. In this week's episode, expect to learn all about Shani's first 3 months of pregnancy, how she told me she was pregnant, my proposal, and all the ins and the outs from the last 3 months. Enjoy the episode. Now, guys, before we start this week's episode of the podcast, I want to talk to you about the Life by Design Mastermind. The Life by Design Mastermind is the mastermind for go-getters and high achievers who are looking to create a more successful, fulfilling, and balanced life by design. If you're serious about transforming your life, achieving your goals, and living a life on your terms, then the Life by Design is your golden ticket. Head over to the show notes and click on the link for more details about the program. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another big episode of podcast, The Double.
The double whammy.
The double whammy. Hi to Shani's audience and hi to my audience.
Blake's. Exactly.
Welcome. We're here again. It's been a while. It's been a hot minute. I think we haven't done one since.
I can't even remember the last time. Oh, it would have been after Bali. Did we do it after Bali? Yeah. Crazy.
Bali. Guys, there's been a bit happening since Bali.
Lots to inform you all on.
You may have heard, you may not have, and that's why we're here to give you the rundown. We are talking all things pregnancy and proposal. It's a very big 3 months.
I think we need a third P in there. Pregnancy, proposal, and
Petrarca. But I'm not going to. That's what
we won't bring that up.
Matty Jackson wanted me to bring in the third P. I was like, well, it's got to be Petrarca. But I don't think we need to talk about AFL today.
No, I think it's all good.
That might ruin the whole episode. So, for those that aren't aware, there has been a proposal and there has been a pregnancy, and we are going to break it down bit by bit, moment by moment. Not every single moment. You don't need to be there under the sheets to know exactly how the pregnancy took place.
They might want to, but we're not going to go there.
We won't. Not today. Not today, Satan. All right. Nope. So we're going to start with the pregnancy.
That's a great place to start.
That's a good place to start. So for those that don't know, what are we? It feels weird to kind of say we because I'm not really carrying the baby, but all right.
Well, you're supporting. You're supporting me carrying the baby. I know it's kind of funny because when we were announcing it, we're like, we're pregnant, but it's like I'm pregnant, but we're pregnant as a couple at the same time.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the right terminology is.
I'm not sure.
Especially in today's world where blokes, apparently some blokes can get pregnant, but we're not going there.
We won't go there. There's so many things we won't go to in this podcast. And
that's true. Not today. So a bit of back history. We, maybe last year or maybe even the start of this year, were quite intentional in our timing. We knew that we were going to Bali for my 40th and Shani didn't want to be pregnant for that, nor did she want to be in particular in the first trimester over there. Bali belly is bad enough, let alone being in the first trimester. So we were very intentional to make sure it didn't happen at the start of this year. And then what we kind of ideally had set our minds on, isn't it good when you set your mind on something and it gets, the universe has got its own plans, is we loved the idea of a Bali baby. I was going to say Bali belly, definitely not, Bali baby. So we were very intentional when we were in Bali and that didn't happen.
What do you mean by very intentional?
Well, we have a small window of opportunity. 4 days?
I think it's like 3 or 4 days. Yeah.
3 or 4 days.
Yeah. But it was kind of funny because it was like literally the 3 or 4 days was like when we were in the villa with like Genoa and SJ and Wiz. So it was kind of like fun and, playful. And there wasn't too much pressure on it. But it was kind of like, I think we both were really like, wouldn't it be awesome if we fell pregnant in Bali on your 40th birthday sort of extravaganza. So that was kind of like our ideal. But we kind of came to this term of baby knows best, and baby actually knows best, and how it planned out was like perfect.
I really liked the idea initially of conceiving there. It would have just been so cool for it to be Bali and for it to be with some of our friends. Literally, they were in the opposite room. So they would have got like a real deep understanding of that, but that didn't happen. You thought you were pregnant though, which is interesting.
I did. Remember, I was like super tired. I was craving heaps of carbs. I wasn't feeling that great, but low key, I think it was a parasite that I got. So that was an interesting. No.
It wasn't the baby. It's interesting you said there wasn't any pressure, and maybe I didn't really communicate it, but I just felt a bit rigid in those 3 or 4
Mm.
days. It felt like I think, everyone has their own different takes and energies around sex, but it just felt a bit rigid and a bit planned, which is kind of what you got to do. But
Literally, it's
yeah,
probably different to how we would normally have sex, where it's like it was very much like these are the days we've got to make sure it's happening on those days, etc.
yeah,
Which probably would feel a bit rigid.
yeah, it felt a bit
Yeah.
dry. But that's just because that was the first time that we were really intentional about it.
Yeah.
So May didn't happen. We got
Mhm.
back, as Shani said, she was having some stuff go on in terms of cravings, and we were like, maybe Bali baby has happened. Didn't
Just a
happen.
Bali parasite.
Just the Bali parasite instead. Didn't happen. And then we tried again in June. Didn't happen.
Well,
And
what I didn't realize, just to add on that, I didn't realize that when you're doing a parasite cleanse, and it makes sense in hindsight, you can't fall pregnant because your body's literally getting rid of anything foreign. So that in hindsight made me feel a little bit better. But I do remember in Bali, like when I got my period and it was like, okay, when we didn't fall pregnant, I just felt all these stories come up about like, what if something's wrong with me? What if I can't fall pregnant? It kind of was a lot of head noise came up at that time. I think, we know so many women who do have issues falling pregnant. So I sort of started to think like, oh, fuck, what if that is me too? And I know it was like the first month, but it just shows like the pressure and I think misconceptions that people fall pregnant like straight away. I've got a lot of friends. It was like, it took them up to 5 months, 6 months plus to fall pregnant. So I think I really want to share that on this podcast today, just to be like, it doesn't always happen straight away. And you kind of never know what's going on behind the scenes as well.
well, I think as well for us, like the more the attachment, the more the suffering, and I don't know. I mean, we have spoken about it, but there was a bit of attachment from my side. I don't know how you felt. There was a bit of attachment to that happening only because, well, for a number of reasons, the whole Bali idea, it's the first time that we were really intentional. Like there was some attachment for me. So there was a bit of a letdown when May didn't happen. I got over it pretty quickly, but there was a little bit of letdown. And then June, we were obviously back in Australia. There was a bit going on in June because we were trying to move house, and kind of the back end of June, the start of July was just a bit messy in terms of moving house. We went and looked at a house. It was too small. Shani kind of said yes. I was like stone cold no in my whole system. We had
had a full body reaction to the place. Like I'm emotional authority in human design, meaning I'm like need time to process, but you're a sacral. So it was like, it's actually really good because I can then tune into your authority and I could see straight away that your whole body shut down. Like you were mute for like 2 hours. And I was like, okay, that is a definite no. I think you just felt like contracted, didn't you? Because it was a much smaller place than we were used to, and we would have had to downsize quite a bit.
Yeah. It was a dance between a clear no in my body and also probably a bit of scarcity of like, maybe this is as good as it gets and kind of navigating that. But I was just, I was off it. And
I think as well, it was a interesting one because financially we would have saved like, $200 a week and it was all bills included. So like on paper, it made sense, but it didn't make sense to us. And I think, in the end, we both felt quite contracted in that space. There wasn't a lot of natural light. Like it was beautiful and modern, but it didn't really feel like a space for us. Yeah. And then after that, we were both like, okay, let's just like put it on ice for a while about finding a house. I think we both decided like, okay, even if we're in the house we were in, which was in Suffolk, and we had housemates, even if we're there for another like couple of months, while we actually take our time to find something, we're like, so be it. So we just kind of parked that, didn't we?
Yeah, parked it, and we're mindful that we had a place. Do you know what I mean? Like we didn't really have to rush the decision. And I remember you sending me a few options. And we're also kind of navigating like buy or rent, like we're just kind of playing with a whole bunch of different things. And the options that you sent me, they were just like, they were dark and old. No. I remember we went and looked at a house that was for sale for like 1.1 or something. We're like, fuck me, you can't even swing a cat in this place. So yeah, there was just a lot of like energy floating around. And then we were intentional in June, albeit with a lot of energy going around. And again, that kind of fell through. And then I think somewhere between the small window that you have in June and the small window that we had in July, the 3 days that you can conceive in, Shani, absolutely. Where was I? I was away for some reason. I was in Sydney. I was in Sydney. I was in Sydney running a journey. Yeah. was in Sydney running a journey, and one of our friends had posted some pictures of this house that we're in now.
Oh my
And
God.
I think Shani said the photos were kind of all right, but it didn't do it justice. So Shani came and looked at it. I'll let kind of share the story, send it to me, and we're like, fuck yes. So we moved sometime, I haven't got the exact date, sometime around the start of July. And then Bob's your uncle. Next week, we conceived. 1 week
Isn't
after
that
moving
wild?
into the house.
But it was so like orchestrated. I personally think by our beautiful little gal. We didn't know it was a little girl at the time. It just felt like it was like, you know, even the way from when we found the house to like how quickly everything moved along to how quickly we moved out of the house, like even the whole process, we went from like a 4-bedroom house with housemates to a, you know, 2-bedroom house. And so it was like we had to sell so much stuff, but it was literally like everything was just like flowing, going. It was probably the quickest 10 days of my life, like, and so much happening in that time. Like we sold so many pieces of furniture. And it was kind of funny, even like, what was it? It was like the exact money we needed to move, we literally had from the furniture we sold. Like it was just all very divine and orchestrated. And I know a lot of friends that I've spoken to that have had babies, it's like when babies are involved, it's like shit moves really, really quick when it's meant to, especially when they're moving house, because the babies know where they want to sort of be birthed into and yeah, where they want to live.
Yeah, so we had 10 days from, I think, the moment Shani saw it to the moment that we moved in. And anyone who knows Shani or doesn't know Shani, she's a fucking wizard on Facebook Marketplace. So like anyone who can conceive the thought of moving house in 10 days would need a Shani in that environment somewhere to make it happen, because it's not easy. And we sold half of our house, and she did an amazing job through Marketplace selling. You know, we had to kind of initially have people look through the house. It was just an absolute circus for that kind of 10 days.
It was kind of fun though. There was a part of me that was like, I
you got a bit
was
of a
really
thrill.
jacked up by it because it was like, there was so much movement. I knew that we're moving into this like amazing place in Ewingsdale. Like it was a very exciting and adrenaline rushed chapter.
So we moved in, we settled, and then it was the next week. And to be fair, the timing of conception wasn't amazing because we had our biggest blow up that we've ever had that week. So it was literally somewhere in that we conceived in that kind of 3 or 4 days. So we'd moved house, we were kind of settling. I'd actually done a
MDMA journey.
I'd done an MDMA journey, which probably isn't ideal the first week moving into a new house when you're trying to settle, but I think that had been organised previously. So there's a lot of energy moving around. And then the week after my MDMA journey, the second week of our house, the week we conceived, we just had a massive blow up, which I think it's our biggest, and we're not
far.
Yeah, we don't really fight. I think we've had kind of 2 semi-big blow-ups in 3.5 years. We have a lot of firm conversations. We just don't fight or argue. So we had that, and that really needed some time to settle. We called in all the big shots, all our mentors, coaches to kind of help us navigate that. And then that's when it conceived, and I'll get Shani to kind of explain that story. But I don't even know if I've told you this. I think I mentioned it briefly once. One of there was a lot of emotion that came through for me when she told me, and I'll get her to kind of backtrack on the story. But one of the things that, or one of the feelings that I was having is I was a little bit, I guess, upset that the conception happened with me in particular being very kind of angry for that few days. So when Shani told me, I went through this wave of emotions, which we'll get onto in a sec. One of those emotions was, I think kind of sadness and disappointment that, the baby was conceived, potentially it had already happened in a really like an unhealthy kind of few days for us. And then we're able to kind of let the dust settle and clear and move forward. And it's been, smooth ride since. But that was one of those kind of feelings that came up for me when Shani told me, which was a bit of a mix of disappointment and sadness. But babe, do you want to give them the scoop on how you presented the information?
Yeah, I want to touch on the big blow up that we had, because after chatting to a lot of my friends who have conceived, they have also said that in and around conception, they've had a huge blow up or argument with their partner. And although we think that's not the right environment I want to bring a child into, as I said as well before, like it was so, I think, orchestrated by, the spirit, our spirit baby, just to like clear out any residue, any heaviness, any like, because if you think about the things that we were fighting about, we don't need to go into it, but it was like all the niggly things that it was just kind of like those little pebbles, those little stones in our shoes. So it was just almost like this one event that brought everything to the surface that, I don't know if you found this, it just felt like over the consecutive weeks, we were just able to like clear it out, talk about it, thinking about back to those weeks, we had probably conversations every day, twice a day, just to get on the same page. We were speaking to our mentors, our coaches, like it almost felt like it was actually such a blessing that it did happen at that time. So I don't actually think of it as a bad thing that happened. I think that I look at us now and we probably don't even speak really that much about, what we would fight about in that time. So one, I think it's good to chat about, because I think sometimes there's a misconception, especially we're with friends on the weekend. They're like, wait, you guys fight? What? This is crazy. So, when we were chatting about what to bring up on this podcast, I was like, I think this is a really important part of it. So that's kind of the blow up piece. But yeah, so when I found out that I was pregnant, you and Genoa were on like a boys' weekend or something. I think you were out on a Friday, which you never really are. A boys' lunch, yeah.
Like a ladies' lunch, but for boys.
Men's lunch.
Men's lunch.
So I was just like at the supermarket, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna buy a pregnancy test. Like my boobs were a little bit sore, but we hadn't really been that intentional, and I knew we had the fight. So I was like, the likelihood of us being pregnant right now is pretty low. So I remember just like buying the pregnancy test and going back home. I had the house to myself for the afternoon because you guys were at your men's lunch. And I remember taking the pregnancy test, and it was funny, like before I took it, I was like, oh, probably not. But in those 3 minutes before, like, I found out, it just something flicked in me. And it was like, as soon as I crossed back through that threshold of the door, I just knew. I was like, there's a baby inside of me right now. And it was the weirdest feeling, because I remember just picking up the pee stick thing, the pregnancy test, and I looked at it and I just full body knew straight away, and it was confirmed by 2 very strong lines. And my period was due the next day, so it was still quite, not early to test, but semi-early. And I just remember like bursting into tears, because I think as we'd been trying for a couple of months now, the waiting actually made me want it even more than I could have imagined as well. So it was actually kind of, in some weird way, nice waiting a couple of months for it to drop in, because it was like, I knew with every cell of my body, like I wanted this so much. So I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. Like Blake's at a men's lunch. Like I'm here home alone. Like I remember just lying on the couch being like, this is so wild. There is a baby inside of me right now. And I just kept looking at my belly being like, this is freaking insane. Like this is amazing. I remember you got home that night. You guys obviously were a bit tipsy because you had a few drinks and whatever. And I didn't want to tell you then, because I obviously wanted you guys to, and Genoa was staying over that weekend as well, because you guys obviously had your lunch. So I had messaged you both, and I was like, let's go watch sunrise in the morning. I think it'll be really beautiful. And I was expecting you guys to say no, because you must have been a bit hungover, but you both said yes. And I messaged Genoa privately. I was like, can you please take a video? I'm making a reel for Blake. Can you take a video of us with sunrise in the background? And he's like, yeah, for sure. So I think in the next morning, but it felt so weird as well, lying there at night, knowing that I knew this piece of information, but I didn't want to tell you. I didn't want to tell you now at that time. So next morning we woke up, and like it again felt so weird, because I was like, I feel like I'm hiding something from you, but in a way of like, I'm going to be telling you in a matter of moments. And so we went down to Blondel Beach, and it was a beautiful sunrise. And I gave my phone to Genoa, and I was like, can you take a little video of us? And I had the pregnancy test in my pocket. And I remember we were just like hugging, sort of embracing with the sunrise in the background. And I said, I've got a surprise for you. And I like pulled up the pregnancy test, and we've got a video of it. I think you posted it, like, but I showed you the test, and you were like, what the fuck? What? Oh my, and you just couldn't believe it. It was so funny. And I think that was such a special moment. Well, I know that was such a special moment, because it's not often as women we get to surprise the men. It's like, as women we get proposed to, and like, we have a lot of the surprises, but I really wanted to make this a special moment for you to find out that we're having a baby, and find out in a really, really special way. So it was so beautiful, and we embraced and hugged and kissed and cried and all the things. And Genoa, as he was filming, was kind of like unpacking what was going on. So it's kind of funny watching back the video and like you can hear Genoa go, "Oh shit," which was so good. So
Yeah.
that is the story of how I told you.
That is the story, guys. Yeah. So from there, are we 15 weeks?
We're 15 weeks now. Yeah.
15
Yeah.
weeks.
So we're into trimester 2. It's what is it? It's a pair now. She's a pair now, I
Yeah.
should say. I keep saying
She's a
it.
pair.
It still doesn't.
Even that was big for us as well. So in week 10, we found out that it was a she, which we were adamant it was a
Adamant.
he. Adamant it was a he. So there's, I mean, we kind of know this, at least conceptually, to let go of what we think we know, because we know nothing when it comes to what the universe wants to present us. But we'd held on to the kind of he, pretty strongly, and then got our first lesson from the universe that, hey, it's not, it's a she.
But
So
also,
that,
I want to put into that, like, we were getting the boy's name left, right, and center.
oh
Like,
God,
we were
it's
having
wild.
people saying to us, like, "Oh, you're having a boy." There was a lot of boy energy. So we were like, "Okay, must be a boy." And I remember having a reading with one of my friends who's very intuitive, and she did a clearing on me 2 days before we had our NI test results, and she was like, "Oh, he's growing so well," and she was like, "Oh shit, I just told you the gender." And I was like, "Oh my God, so it's a boy. Okay." And then 2 days later, we find out from the test that it's a girl. So we were gobsmacked, weren't we, when it happened? But it was so beautiful.
Yeah, it was another shock, and this whole
Mm.
thing continues to be, especially again from I've got to learn my lesson from like a place of attachment, the attachment to thinking it was going to be a boy, and then when we found out, for me, it was like 2 seconds of shock of like it's not a boy, and I think, which I've kind of said this to Shani, one, the attachment, but two, for me, I think there's a little piece around obviously wanting a boy at some stage for a number of reasons, but also that there's a part of me that would love to see the kind of Worrall-Thompson name keep going. And my brother's got a daughter, and my two siblings in the UK haven't had kids yet. So there was a little attachment for me of like how cool that we can kind of continue on the name. But
Yeah.
that probably lasted like 2 to 4 seconds. And then I was like, fuck, this is so cool. So
I
that was
know.
our week 10 blood test. And this whole time you've obviously asked me kind of regularly, like, how does it feel? What do you feel? And it wasn't until the 12-week scan that it really felt like anything for me. And I haven't spoken to any other blokes, partly intentionally, because I just want to honor my own experience, and partly it just hasn't kind of come up in conversation. But it feels strange. I kind of feel a little bit like a passenger in this whole process, which really I kind of am. But the 12-week scan was the first time that it really felt true for me, kind of seeing her kind of kicking around and twisting and
Yeah.
turning and doing all her things. And there was emotion when you told me. I remember kind of welling up, and the tears started flowing. But there was a different emotion that kind of came with that 12-week scan.
I think the first 12 weeks as well feels a little bit surreal. Like I'm getting a bit bloated, and like I felt my stomach was, starting to show, but it still didn't. I was like, is there even anything in there? I could just be putting on all this weight or like, being tired or whatever. So it was, even for me, it felt quite surreal. And I think there's like well, I'd certainly felt it. There's a lot of fear around those first 12 weeks of like, oh, you could miscarry or something could go wrong or this, that, and the other. And I really tried to kind of block it out as much as I could. And I really kept on just coming back to like, my body is doing exactly what it knows how to do. And, like everything is working out and it's all good. It's all healthy, etc. But I even remember having quite a little bit of fear, like as we were coming up to that 12-week of like, fuck, what if there's nothing in there, or what if something's gone wrong? But it was just so reassuring. And yeah, I hadn't really known how I'd sat with like getting the scans, but that scan felt really true for me. And I was like, I'm so glad that I did it for us as well, so you could really feel, oh my God, this is real. And I remember we just sat in the car like crying afterwards, didn't we? Because it was just like the most beautiful thing ever.
It's weird, and I can only imagine other parents feel the same. I don't know, because I haven't had this conversation. I don't even think I kind of use this language, when we were talking about it. But it's such a strange feeling to see this ultrasound and this silhouette of a little human and just think it's the most beautiful thing in the world. Like it looks like
It
a
looks like a
fucking
jelly
alien.
bean.
It looks like a mix of an alien and a jelly bean. And I was just in awe of like how beautiful it is. Like anyone
Yeah.
who looks at a 12-week scan is like, dude, that is not beautiful. I've literally got this, I've got the picture behind me. It
Yeah.
sits behind my computer. And it's it's bizarre. It's
But I
bizarre
love
that
like you kept on being like, let's send it to this person, let's send it to that person. I'm like, yeah, I'm like so happy to, but I'm like,
they
I'm
don't
sure
care.
that they really
They
don't
did not
care.
care about the photo, but I was so excited to send
I
it.
know
I
it's the
think, yeah,
best.
similar to you, the first 12 weeks is interesting. I dance between, and I still find myself dancing now, between just allowing myself to feel fully everything that is. And
Mhm.
we've had a big kind of few weeks with both announcements, and that the part of me that fears it being taken away. And I have to keep reminding myself to live fully, like that's part of my message in terms of my brand. And
Mm.
here I am dancing between living fully and just allowing myself to immerse myself in all the feelings that come with it and being cautious of, things going wrong. So in that first 12 weeks when, we were telling close friends and family, there was parts of me that was like I was in conflict a lot, just so cool to be able to celebrate with all of our friends. And it just feels like, for what 16 weeks now, it's just felt like one celebration that just keeps on giving,
Does.
from the pregnancy into the proposal now. And then obviously the birth, like it's an 18-month celebration, which is so cool to be able to celebrate that with the closest of our friends as well. There's
It does
obviously
feel like every week is like a different celebration because you're like, okay,
yeah.
this week it's a mango, and like it's so fun just
Mm.
to have all those mini milestones before the baby's even here. Like it's wild.
And because so many of our friends live like interstate and not everyone lives in Byron, there's different celebrations when we go to Melbourne and your girls haven't seen you for 12 weeks and they get to
Mm.
kind of see the bump. And then, when we go at Christmas, they'll see the ring. Like there's so many different little celebrations. And also, at the end of the day, there's only a handful of celebrations of this size through life, and
Yeah.
you've got two of them happening in the space of 3 months. So there's a lot of energy in our world at the moment.
And I think we should say, like, my sister is pregnant as well. So my sister Tabitha is like my bestest friend in the whole world. And we found out that we are pregnant at the same time, which is just like, oh my God, I can't even tell you how amazing it is to be going on this journey together. And, yeah, every day be chatting about like what we're feeling and what's going on. So she's like 4 or 5 weeks ahead of us. But yeah, it just feels so beautiful to be able to share this journey. She's having a little girl as well, which is wild. But we've had very, very similar pregnancies in a way of like not much morning sickness. And yeah, it's been really nice to kind of journey with her alongside.
Well, yeah, I mean, you've had a excellent run, knock on wood, so far in terms
Mm.
of not much morning sickness, not even, and I don't know what you expected, but I just expected you to be, like a cookie monster who ate every single thing possible when it came to cakes and chips and everything. But
Mm.
that hasn't really kicked in either. I mean, you went through that patch where you were super tired, and we're so fortunate to have the flexibility and freedom that we do, where you could
Mm.
have, afternoon sleeps often. But relative to some of the stories that we've heard, in that first trimester, you've
Yeah.
had a pretty good run.
Yeah, it hasn't been like I didn't know what to expect as well. And I think like if you have been a listener for the show for a while, Blake and I had a pregnancy that we didn't go ahead with when within the first 6 months of us being together. And I was remember how bad I was? I was like literally cooped up in my room. I was feeling so depressed, so sad. Like it was horrible. Whereas this pregnancy has been completely different. And I do put it down to, I think my nutrition's been a whole lot better this pregnancy, and I'm eating meat now, so my body's all topped up on that. And yeah, I think like probably the things that I struggled with the most was I had a lot of like cystic acne along my chin and down my neck for the first trimester. That's kind of feels like it's easing up now. And I would just say the tiredness, like really having to deal with, managing my business and managing clients and all that stuff. And then also, nearly feeling like I'm falling asleep at my laptop at 2 o'clock every afternoon. So I just really restructured my days so I could have the afternoons off and tried to pack as much as I could in the mornings. I feel fine now. Like I would say as soon as I hit there was really only 2 weeks where I felt a little bit bleh, like just felt hungover all the time. I didn't throw up, didn't really have any crazy morning sickness or anything. Well, I didn't really feel it at all. I think it was just a lot of food aversions, but that was for about 2 weeks, craving a lot of carbs, a lot of, ham sandwiches, ham toasted sandwiches. But then it kind of feels like it's back to kind of normal now.
Yeah, well, yeah. Again, I don't know what to expect. I guess we hear a whole bunch of different stories. You're kind of, in terms of your closest friends, you're probably the halfway in terms of those that have had babies and those that are still to come. For me, albeit my groups have changed a fair bit, there's a lot of people that have come before me in this space. And a lot of those stories, were of, women that had really challenging first trimesters and, all the cravings and things like that. So it was quite interesting to see that wasn't really the case for you.
And like hats off to the women who have, HG or morning sickness all the way through. Like I've had a few friends who've literally been every day head in the toilet bowl, haven't been able to move. And they've still had to go up and get to work and, do all the things that and even parent as well. So I just take my hats off to those women and I'm like, that is next level superhero stuff.
100%. Is there anything else you want to mention on the pregnancy side of things?
Pregnancy side of things? Not that I can think of. Like if anyone's got questions, like we're obviously, super open and transparent about this whole journey. So yeah, if people have questions, more than happy to answer them if we do another follow-up podcast. But I think that's it from my end.
Yeah, I think in terms of how we navigate pregnancy, second trimester, parenting, how you want to birth, all those things, maybe that comes in a future episode.
I love it. Cool. And now for the second P. Oh, no.
Proposal. So where to start with this? I think we started talking about it. I mean, it was on the cards from kind of day one, but I think we properly started talking about it maybe last year.
Well, I reckon 2 years ago. Like, I feel like we designed the ring together like 2 years ago.
That's where I was going. Yeah. Maybe it was longer. Yeah.
I think it was longer. Yeah.
Okay. Maybe 18 months, 2 years. So we started talking about it then, and Shani took fucking forever to make up. She's very good at making decisions generally. This took forever.
It was so wild.
I reckon you took 4 or 5 months to even get an idea of the color to me. And then she gave me a little kind of piece to work with in terms of the color. And then I went to work. So that's been some really cool feedback. Firstly, that she loves it because we know, there's people out there that their wedding ring, which is not ideal. And secondly, it's cool that it's quite unique. I don't think either of us have seen a yellow stone like that. So that's been cool to, I had one job, was to get the ring right, and I feel like I got it right. So
absolutely nailed it. Absolutely nailed it.
So yeah, that took a while. A big shout out to Maddie Zammel in Adelaide for helping me kind of that. And then it was just a case of kind of navigating how I was going to do it. So hindsight, what I could have done, maybe should have done, but also very happy with how things turned out, was I could have done it in Bali. We climbed Mount Batua, as I think we might have mentioned on the last episode that we did this. We spoke about Mount Batua, the most unbelievable place in Bali to climb. So we climbed that, and I reckon probably within 5 minutes of climbing it, and this is at like fucking 3:30 in the morning because it's pitch black dark, I was like, fuck, this would have been a good place, I reckon. So anyway, we got to the top. We saw the most unbelievable sunrises, you will ever see. And it just kept on growing. I was like, fuck, yeah, this would have been good. This would have been good. And then towards the end of our time up there, we were walking almost to kind of head down. And we heard these pretty much next to us, just up on a little hill. And I looked up and a guy just proposed. I was like, motherfucker. And I just my stomach sank. So anyway, missed that opportunity. Didn't really think that one through. And then when we got back, I kind of was like, okay, I probably need to come up with a pretty good plan because that would have been a good one to do it up there. And I thought about Hamilton Island, and then I thought, well, we've been there the start of this year, maybe not. I thought about Uluru because I was like, Shani said, who was it might have been Zach. Zach was like, bro, you missed out kind of
that's right.
Giving her the ring on that mountain. You're going to have to do a bigger mountain. So I was like, big mountain, Uluru, not quite big, quite iconic. And then decided against that. I thought about WA, and then decided against that. And then finally I kind of landed on Mollymook, which for those that don't know is the south coast of Sydney. It's about 3 hours south. And the reason I chose Mollymook is I have a friend whose dad owns Bannisters, which is an amazing hotel down there. I'd spend a fair bit of time down past Mollymook, probably 10 years ago, 15 years ago. They've got a house at a place called Bawley Point. So I kind of knew the area a bit. And I also knew that Shani hadn't been there. I actually didn't know that you hadn't been South Coast at all, pretty much. So that was
Yeah.
really nice to orchestrate that. So the plans were kind of in the background. And I was like, well, I need to get the ring sorted. So I finally signed off on that. It got sent up to me, which Maddie, God bless him,
Aries.
I was like, dude, you don't just like, surely you don't just send a ring. He's like, yeah, mate, we do it all the time. So I was freaking the fuck out, going like, what happens if I lose the
Mm.
ring? All of this stuff. Anyway, he's got insurance and that kind of helped me sleep at night. So I would have had it, I can't even remember, maybe 2 months ago, and found a place to hide it in the shoe that I just knew Shani wouldn't kind of.
Which shoe was it?
It was my new pair of those
Yeah.
grey ones that I haven't worn. So I
Mhm.
tucked the box in real tight and then put socks over the top. So they
That's
just
so
look like,
funny.
because even that, I was like, where can I put it that she's not going to find and that I'm not going to like forget? I was even
Mm.
freaking that I'd forget. I was like, in hindsight, you don't forget where you put a wedding ring. I wouldn't have thought. So I sat with that. I organized banisters. And then I thought, okay, I need to map this out so that she doesn't find a way to book stuff in, because
Mm.
that just ends up being logical kind of nightmare in terms of all the extra bits. So the first thing I did was I reached out to Janelle and I was like, dude, do you reckon we can pretend that you've got a lunch on with your dad up in the Gold Coast on the Friday, the day that we're meant to fly out? He's like, yeah, I'll put it in the diary. So that was the first bit. I was like, okay, I've locked the space where we need to get on a flight so Shani can't book anything.
And we also booked in a podcast that morning as well.
We booked in a podcast
Yeah.
that morning. So I'd really set myself up nicely. And for whatever reason, as the universe has it, Shani just decides that's the perfect weekend to try and organize anything and everything that she possibly can. So she started by organizing a podcast with the twins. So I had to message the twins and say, hey guys, do you mind? I'm going to have to cancel that. She then went and booked a dinner with some of our friends on the Saturday night up in Gold Coast. So I messaged them and I was like, guys, we're going to have to cancel that. She then thought she'd go another round and she organised some work up in Goldie with one of our friends, Mon. So I had to message Mon and cancel that as well. So she did a good job of trying to derail my plans, but I was able to navigate all the
You
extra
were.
plans that she made. And then we woke up Friday. I went to the gym. Yeah, I went to the
Yeah,
gym.
you
I
did go to
came
gym.
back. Yeah, I came back and I think you sent me a message, didn't you, saying, can I use your AirPods? I was like, oh no, I didn't think about this. So I thought she was going to go. She was going to go to the gym. She's
I
like, I'm going to go to the
was.
gym. Can I use your AirPods? And I was like, yes, but I need you back by 7:45. And then I'll let you kind of jump in with how
Yeah.
that was feeling for you when I proposed that.
Well, it was kind of funny because I was like, yeah, can I borrow your headphones? Going to go to the gym. And you were like, yes, you got to be home at this certain time. And I was like, why do I need to be home at, like, I think you said 7:30. And I'm like, that doesn't make sense. We've got a podcast at like 9. We're meeting Genoa at like 1 in Goldie or whatever it was. It just wasn't making sense. And then you're like, just make sure you're home at this time. So I was like, okay, I won't go to the gym. I'll just go for a walk and I'll be home like a little bit earlier. And I remember being on the phone to my sister and I was like, Tab, Blake's acting really sus. Like, he said that I need to be home at 7:30. I don't understand like why I need to be home. Like, we don't have anything on. I'm just a little bit sus. And anyway, so I walked back in the door and I remember looking at you and I was like, what is going on? I was really like, what's happening? And you were filming me and I was just like, oh my God, what is going on? I can tell something, you're being weird. And you're like, go into the bedroom. And so I went into the bedroom and I thought someone was going to jump out and scare me. I thought someone's flown in from interstate to surprise me. But I was like, who? I feel like I've seen a lot of people recently. And then there was 2 suitcases lying on the floor and you were like, okay, you've got 90 minutes to pack your bags. We're going on our baby moon. But what was funny is like we had actually planned in the diary that the baby moon was going to be in 3 weeks' time. So you'd had that sort of in the diary. So I had absolutely no idea, no clue. And you were like, okay, you get to know it's in Australia and you get to know that it's kind of a similar climate to Byron. So pack accordingly. And so I was like, oh my gosh. And then straight away, my control freak brain was like, wait, Rach and Tobes, we've got them tomorrow night. What about one? We've got to catch up with her. And like, what about this and that? And everything that I was like, what about? You were like, it's sorted, it's sorted, it's sorted. And it was kind of funny because I hadn't really done any washing. I don't think it had that much clean clothes. But I was like, just surrender, just pack what you can, like it'll all be fine. And then what was next? We kind of packed our bags and got in the car. I still didn't know where we're going at this stage. And we drove to Gold Coast and then we got on a plane to Sydney. But it was kind of fun because like we were at the airport and, we were putting our flights, we were checking in. And he's like, okay, what flight do you think we're checking into? And it was kind of like Sydney, Brisbane, it was like Melbourne or something else, or Bali or something. And I was like, well, it wouldn't be Bali because we went there recently. I was like, it could be Brisbane if we're flying out somewhere else, could be Sydney if we're flying out somewhere else. And anyway, ended up being Sydney. And then we got to Sydney and then we got a 3-hour car down to Mollymook. And I had never heard of Banisters, but it was like so beautiful. Literally, we had a little suite that was just looking out into the ocean. Whales were breaching. Like it was so beautiful. And you just planned it so well. Like I literally had zero clue, which is quite a hard task to surprise me. So you nailed it.
Yeah, it's not easy because you catch on pretty quickly.
Pretty quickly.
Can ruin other surprises. So prior to that, I'd obviously kind of thought about how I was going to do the proposal. And I was speaking with one of our friends, Jay. And I even spoke to, we were kind of having a bit of a chuckle. Do we get someone to skydive in and just bring the ring? Do we get skywriting through the sky?
Just something subtle.
Just something really subtle. And then Jay and I were talking about maybe something like a picnic. So I originally reached out to the guys who organise picnics at Bateman's Bay. They originally said yes. And then they came back and said, oh, actually, we can't do that date. And then they put me in touch with the guys. So what happened was Saturday night. Oh, no, it was Sunday morning. I think I mentioned something briefly Saturday night, like we're going for a special breakfast or something.
Yes, that's what it was.
So my alarm went off at 5:20. I was like, babe, you've got 40 minutes to dress nicely. We're going out for a nice breakfast. And I got her in the car blindfolded. And then she's like, Blake, feeling good. So I was like, okay, you can take the blindfold off, but you got to keep your eyes closed. And then we drove 5 minutes up the road. And these girls, Carly and Gina, I think their names are, had done an amazing job of setting up like this picnic rug with chairs and roses and food in this beautiful like spot on the beach just down the road from Banisters. So when we got to the beach, I got Shani to put her blindfold on again and walked her to just in front of like the rug and the picnic. And then, kneel down, got her to lift her eye mask, and Bob's your uncle. That was
okay. You're missing the funniest part.
Which bit?
The fact that you literally couldn't even say the word marry me.
I forgot to say, will you marry me? I got
so
really
funny.
caught up in the moment. Really caught up in the moment.
So in it.
We're both in tears and laughing, and she's like, "Are you going to ask me?" I was like, "Ah," and then I asked her, "Will you marry me?" So that part wasn't smooth, but the rest of it went according to plan.
But it was like you freaking nailed it. I'm just going to like go into detail for all the girlies who are listening who are like, hold on. Blake's just like skimmed over this whole picnic sort of setup. Like it was all aesthetic and like beautiful color schemes. There was like red roses everywhere. I reckon there would have been like 50 plus red roses everywhere. There was like candles. There was this whole like fresh fruit and like she had yogurt and like this whole platter of amazing sort of breakfast things. And then 2 chairs and Blake, Grandpa Blake asked for some back support. So it wasn't just like a little cushion, but it was a proper, chair with back support.
I do need back support these days, guys.
So funny.
That's where I'm at.
But he had a photographer there as well. And I didn't actually notice the photographer until, we were like so in the vortex in the moment. And I was like, oh my God, what the hell? Like there was a photographer capturing the whole morning. And, there was an amazing lady who'd set up the whole breakfast and like picnic situation. But you just nailed it. And I think then I saw the ring and I was like, oh my freaking God, like it is, amazing and perfect. So you did very, very well. I think you set the bar very high for a lot of men out there.
Well, it takes a bit of time. And again, I think the only thing, you only get a handful of those moments in life.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that it went well and I'm glad that like put time into it. And then it was really nice on the way back. I think you kind of caught wind of what I was up to, but I was like, okay, I didn't say we're going back to Sydney actually. I said we're going back in that general direction for the last night. So anyway, we got back to Sydney and I said something. I think I said, you got to be ready for a nice dinner at 6. I went and trained with a few of the boys, came back, and we went for a little walk to
Mm.
dinner. And then what was it? I think 8 of our friends had got to get, well, I'd got them together and we had dinner with them, which was really nice to kind of round out the trip and celebrate with them as well.
Yeah. And my bestie Dom like flew up from Melbourne just for that dinner, which was so nice because she was like, I cannot miss this. And I was like messaging my other bestie Sammy, and I was like, can we catch up? And she's like, oh, sorry, like I can't tonight, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, she was at dinner. So you did an amazing job of like organizing. And yeah, I didn't know about it. So you did very well.
So, guys, that's where we're at. It's been a whirlwind kind of 15 weeks, and also just so amazing I've just really enjoyed celebrating these moments with our friends. It's almost kind of my favorite bit so far, and, to celebrate what is still to come, over the next 6 months. And then the time after that, when our little girl comes in, and even, we got our first few presents from friends, and even like just, there's all these just mini emotional moments that, we kind of, with all of our friends, we're like, calling them uncle and auntie, can't wait till auntie, Dom's here and whatever else. And it just feels, I don't know, everyone else's kind of bringing, and, I had a very small family. Shani's got a pretty solid sized family, but it's really cool to think how many beautiful people in our world that will play such a big part in her world. Yeah, I just feel very grateful for all the people that we've got.
I know. Yeah, it feels like such a special season, and it's like even just seeing how, all of our friends have like shown up for us. And I know I was chatting to you today about it, where I was like, it feels like it's so exciting, but at the same time, like it's overwhelming, like how much love, and like it just feels like every day my heart is just like expanding more and more and more. And like I had a moment today where I was like, I feel like so anxious that, what if this doesn't, or what if something bad happens to kind of ruin it all? Because I know that had sort of been my patterning in the past. But it was just like, just as you were sort of saying before, like just stay in the moment, like live in the present, just keep expanding your heart. And I'm like, fuck, like a little girl isn't even here, and our hearts have been blown open and expanded this much. Like I can't even imagine, what's going to happen when she actually comes Earthside as well.
Yeah, it's wild. It's wild. Like you've got family, and then you got family as well. And, we're just so lucky to have so many amazing people around us that we get to celebrate, and that also are like, celebrating you, really in terms of this exciting moment of proposals, and also pregnancy, and just, whether it's your girlfriend or even my mates, just, to have that kind of village around us is amazing. And I'm mindful that not everyone, has that. And then again, to have the support that we've got from actual family as well. It's just the most beautiful environment to bring her into the world. And we're just, grateful for everyone that we've got.
Yeah. Yeah. So bloody grateful. Yeah.
So, gang, that is it. That's the pregnancy proposal. I think we'll probably be back I haven't told you this yet, so you're all right with it. I think we'll probably be back in a few weeks with a little recap of 2024 as well. So expect another episode in the coming weeks. Peace.
See ya.